And welcome to Hannity. Tonight, the man who stood on the Senate floor for 21 hours, 19 minutes, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, joins me for an exclusive first television interview since Tuesday night's marathon speech. But first, Senator Cruz's performance has clearly shaken the Obama White House, including the president himself. Earlier today, the president came out swinging in Maryland and resorted to his, well, predictable name-calling. He said Republicans who were critical of his disastrous health care law were, quote, irresponsible, and that they were trying to, quote, blackmail him.
Of course, the closer we've gotten to this date, the more irresponsible folks who are opposed to this law have become. They have made such a big political issue out of this, trying to scare everybody with lies about death panels and killing Granny. Right? I mean, that's Armageddon. So if it actually works, they'll look pretty bad. To suggest America not pay its bills just to try to blackmail a president into giving them some concessions on issues that have nothing to do with the budget. I mean, this is the United States of America. We're not a deadbeat nation. We don't run out on our tab. We don't not pay our note.
All right, joining me now from Washington for his first TV interview since his historic speech on Tuesday night, Senator Ted Cruz. How are you, Senator? How you holding up?
I'm doing great, Sean. It's always terrific to join you.
Did you get some sleep?
I did. In fact, you'll like this. I went home and took a nap yesterday about 4 p.m., got up about 8:45, went and made myself a sandwich, sat down. The first thing I did is watch Hannity and then watch Greta.
You know what? That's a good schedule. Then I hope you went back to bed and took a little rest.
I did go back to bed after that.
You know, one side note question before we get into the specifics, because this is a really important issue. But so you stood for 21 hours, 19 minutes. You have to stand the whole time. You're not allowed to eat on the Senate floor. You're not allowed to go to the bathroom either. Did you go and take a steam bath or something beforehand, dehydrate yourself?
Well, you know, the advice Rand gave me beforehand, he gave me a couple of things. He said, one, wear comfortable shoes. And so I didn't wear the boots I usually wear. I went and bought some black tennis shoes, which helped. And two, he said, do not drink much water. And so the whole time I just took tiny sips. I think I probably drank less than a glass of water all 21 hours, and that's about the only way you can make it without going to the bathroom.
Well, I watched it throughout most of the night. I lost a lot of sleep myself this week, but for a good cause. And I was amazed at your ability, how lucid and fluid and articulate you were, and you didn't seem to miss a beat. Let's talk about the substance of where we are. First, let's start with the president's comments and your reaction to that.
Well, you know, I'm glad to see that the American people speaking up as they have in overwhelming numbers is getting the president's attention. And I think those comments suggest that he's worried, you know, when he's throwing around insults like irrational, like blackmail. You know, the first thing I thought listening to that is I wonder if he thinks James Hoffa, the president of the Teamsters, was irrational, because James Hoffa wrote a letter to Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi that said he was opposing Obamacare because he was speaking on behalf, and these are Hoffa's words, of millions of Americans, working Americans, and the families that depend on them, because Obamacare was destroying their health care. And destroying is the word James Hoffa used. So I guess I'd ask the president, if he's saying everyone criticizing Obamacare is irrational, if he means to be saying that about the president of the Teamsters.
Well, it's an interesting question. You know, there's so many aspects of all of this. I think the most surprising thing to me as a conservative, and I'm a registered conservative in New York, is the way you've been treated by some of your colleagues. At the end of this 21-hour, 19-minute marathon, you had a little back and forth with the majority leader, Harry Reid, and he was offering you another hour, seemingly, but you had to offer 15 minutes of that to John McCain. And as soon as you got off the floor, John McCain attacked you. Let me play it for you. I want to get your reaction to this.
I resoundingly reject that allegation. That allegation, in my view, does a great disservice for those brave Americans and those who stood up and said, what's happening in Europe cannot stand. When the ship was turned back and the passengers on that ship were sent directly to the gas chambers, when Czechoslovakia fell and the slaughter continued. There were many who raised their voices.
Now, you were talking about appeasement. I mean, and I know exactly what he was referring to. What's your reaction to that?
Well, look, I respect and admire John McCain. He is a war hero. He's someone who served his country, and he suffered in a Vietnamese prison, and so you know I will have nothing for praise for John McCain. I disagree with him on this issue, but I respect the man and I respect his service.
What bothered me even more is he seemed to have collaborated with Harry Reid on this, because Harry Reid was going to give him that 15 minutes. All right, you had a back and forth. I'll ask you one more, and then we'll talk more about the specifics. But Bob Corker today, there seems to be anger at you. As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, did every senator and every congressman that's a Republican, didn't they all run on the platform they would repeal and replace Obamacare? Is there anyone that didn't run on that?
As far as I know, everybody did, and we've twice had votes this year where all 45 Republicans at the time voted against Obamacare, either to repeal it or defund it.
All right, so there were a lot of symbolic votes to do that, but this is the one that would actually do it. So
That's exactly right.
So I keep hearing that there are tactical differences, and I asked your fellow Texas senator on my radio show yesterday, John Cornyn, and he says, no, if we get elected in 2014 and get control of the Senate, then in January 2015. Is that what their goal is, those that disagree with you here?
Look, the tactical difference, you put your finger on it. It's a difference between wanting to take a symbolic show vote that's not going to happen versus actually standing up on the continuing resolution. This is a vote that matters because it's got to pass. And if we stand together, if tomorrow at 12:30, 41 Republicans stand together, we can stop Harry Reid from funding Obamacare. And right now, there are a lot of Republicans who are publicly saying they intend to vote with Harry Reid and the Democrats tomorrow to give Harry Reid the power to fund Obamacare. And look, I got to say I disagree with that. And what has been happening that encourages me, Sean, is we have over 1.8 million people who signed the national petition on don'tfundit.com who are lighting up the phones. The phones are melting down in the U.S. Senate, who are getting on Facebook, getting on Twitter, and asking senators, vote no on cloture. Don't stand with Harry Reid. Don't give Harry Reid the power to fund Obamacare. And that's making a real difference.
And the reason you want to vote no on cloture is because as soon as you vote no on cloture, then Harry Reid would just need a simple majority to strip out the defunding provision of the House CR. Is that it?
That's exactly right. Now, there are some Republicans that are trying to tell their constituents that voting yes on cloture means you support defunding Obamacare. Well, I'll just point out one thing, Sean. Harry Reid is going to vote yes on cloture. Every single Democrat is going to vote yes on cloture. And the reason's simple. They know that if you get 60 senators to vote yes on cloture, that Harry Reid can fund Obamacare in its entirety. And I think we ought to have all 46 Republicans unite. We should stand together with the House Republicans as one and say we don't support Obamacare because it's hurting the American people. It's killing jobs. It's threatening the health care of millions of Americans. And we're going to stand up and fight against it.
I want to ask you about that. But let's first go to this exchange you had with Bob Corker of Tennessee, and then I'll follow up on what you just said. Let's play that.
Is it more important to the senator from Texas and the senator from Utah that the people around the country watch this vote, or is it more important to us that we have a good policy outcome from our standpoint and actually have a body that has a majority of Republicans to be able to react and send back something of good policy? This is confusing to me.
All right, you went back and forth, and we didn't air your part. I want to get to the heart of this. What is Bob Corker's plan to repeal Obamacare then? Because they keep saying this is a tactical difference. When is Obamacare repealed under his plan? Do you know?
If he has a plan, I'm not aware of what it is.
Well, I mean, it seems that why are they? Is it that they're angry? You're a freshman senator, and how dare you fulfill your campaign promise to your constituents? Because I don't see you're doing anything other than that. Why is there such resentment here? Because this was getting downright hostile.
Well, Sean, I don't want to speculate about Bob Corker's motivations in coming to the floor and supporting Harry Reid and attacking Mike Lee, which is what he did this afternoon. But let me say this generally. A lot of Republicans, they've been here a long time. And they're beaten down, and they're scared that if we stand together on this, and if a government shutdown results, that Republicans will be blamed and it's too politically risky. And, I just think we need to stand for principle and actually stand together. And, some of those Republicans are telling their constituents they're going to vote for cloture. They're going to vote for giving Harry Reid the power to fund Obamacare, but they're trying to convince their constituents that that's a vote against Obamacare. And it just isn't. And if it were, Harry Reid and every Democrat in the Senate wouldn't be voting the exact same way.
So this is important, I think, for the American people to hear. So basically, this is about fear of being blamed for a government shutdown. That's it. It's not. Is it any more and fear of the political consequences that they may get blamed? Is that what it is?
I think that's right. And Sean, if you look back at the last 4 elections, 2006, 2008, 2010, 2012, 3 of the last 4 Republicans got clobbered. We got clobbered in 06, 08, and 12. The only one we did well was 2010, where we actually stood up and fought and we ran against Obamacare. And what are a lot of voices in Washington saying? We should do the same thing we did in 06, 08, and 12. We ought to just roll over because that's the way you win elections. It's not the way you win elections. You win elections by fighting for the American people, fighting for principle. And I hope tomorrow all 46 Republicans come together, even those that have said they're going to vote with Harry Reid. I hope they have second thoughts. I hope they listen to their constituents and they stand together to vote against giving Harry Reid the power to fund Obamacare.
All right, Senator, stay right there. We got one more segment with you. We'll continue with Senator Cruz. And welcome back to Hannity as we continue with arrested Texas Senator Ted Cruz. I'm assuming here, Senator, I know you're voicing some optimism, but my prediction is Corker and McCain and company, they're not going to vote no on cloture tomorrow. I don't think you're going to get the 41 votes that you need. You only need 41 of the 46. And I'm assuming this is going to then be, they're going to strip out the defunding provision in the House CR, and they're going to send it back to the House. Do you have any inclination what will happen from there?
Well, it's a good question. You may well be right in your prediction. I mean, if everyone who has vocally said that he was going to vote for cloture does so, then Harry Reid will get the votes he needs to fund Obamacare. Now, there are a lot of senators that I think are still on the fence. So let me tell your viewers, if you go to don'tfundit.com, if you click on the links to go onto the Facebook page and Twitter pages and make phone calls to the senators that are listed there, it can still make a real difference. But if you're right, if tomorrow we don't hold 41 Republicans, then Harry Reid will successfully fund Obamacare in the Senate. Bill will go back to the House. Yeah. And then that's where the fight is going to have to really be fought. I'm so encouraged that last Friday, House Republicans stood united. They did the right thing. They defunded Obamacare. And when it goes back to the House, I hope and believe House Republicans will continue to stand their ground. And if they do, I think we can win this fight because every day the momentum is with us. The American people are getting energized, getting engaged. And you know what, Sean? The truth is on our side. Millions of Americans are at risk of losing their jobs or not getting a job to begin with, or they are finding themselves pushed into part-time work. They're facing skyrocketing health insurance premiums, and they have either been threatened with or at risk of losing their health insurance. And, one of the strategies that those folks who don't want to defund Obamacare are doing is they try to make it all personal. They try to have it be about personal attacks and personalities and back and forth. And it's not about any politician in Washington. It's about the fact that Obamacare isn't working and the American people are hurting. And if we can get politicians in Washington to listen to the American people, to listen to their constituents, that's how we're going to change things here in Washington.
We've tried to outline in this program how much more it's going to cost people. And instead of a $2,500 savings, it's a $7,500 increase in premium on average across the country, family of 4. And how unsustainable. The CBO says it'll bankrupt us. And you said on the floor the other night, even big labor's now come on board. Have you ever spoken to those guys? I'm just curious.
I haven't. We've reached out to some of them, but we haven't been able to connect those dots. Yeah. And, I will say this. I made a prediction in the filibuster, and it's not a prediction I like, which is that if we aren't successful in standing up and defunding Obamacare, the prediction I made is before the end of his second term, President Obama will grant an exemption for big labor also. He's already granted an exemption for big business. He's already granted an exemption for Congress. And I think labor has been told, just wait a little while. It's not a good time politically. But look, I don't think This should be about the politically powerful getting exemptions, getting special treatment, Congress having, as Dick Durbin put it, a first-class health care, and the American people getting stuck back in coach, or actually it's more like the baggage compartment. We shouldn't have any exemptions, and if they're going to exempt big business in Congress, they should exempt every American.
Well, and even Joe Manchin agreed at least to a one-year delay today, which I thought was interesting. Let me ask you one question about the debt ceiling before I let you go, Senator. Let me first take you back to the year 2006. Let me read to you the words of then Senator Obama. The fact that we're here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. It's a sign that the U.S. government cannot pay its own bills. Over the past 5 years, our federal debt has increased by $3.5 trillion to $8.6 trillion. That's trillion with a T. This rising debt is a hidden domestic enemy. Then in 2007, when he was running for president, here's him in his own words.
The problem is that the way Bush has done it over the last 8 years is to take out a credit card from the Bank of China in the name of our children, driving up our national debt from $5 trillion for the first 42 presidents. Number 43 added $4 trillion by his lonesome, so that we now have over $9 trillion of debt that we are going to have to pay back. $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
Well, now we're at $17 trillion, and he's added close to $7 trillion himself. And he's saying if you do the very thing that he did just a few years ago, that's blackmail. Really?
Well, remember the days when we had $9 trillion in debt, and he said it was unprincipled, unpatriotic. Now we're nearly double that. And listen, Sean, what we're doing is fundamentally immoral. I mean, our national debt has grown over 60% under President Obama. It's larger than the size of our whole economy. And if we don't pull back, our kids, our grandkids, they're going to spend their whole working lives not meeting the challenges of the future, not meeting their priorities, just paying off our debts. And no generation in American history has ever done that. Our parents didn't do that to us, Sean. Their parents didn't do that to them. And I know there are millions of Americans across this country who don't want to do that to our kids and grandkids. And yet President Obama and the Senate Democrats, they don't even acknowledge there's a problem. I mean, the president just recently said we don't have a debt problem. Well, I think you and I have a very different definition of a debt problem, and the American people have a very different definition of a debt problem than does President Obama and the Senate Democrats.
All right, Senator Cruz, glad you stood up this week for principle, and we're going to be watching very closely tomorrow, and then we'll be watching the House after that. I venture. We'll see. Thank you so much, and hope you get some more rest over the weekend if you can. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, my friend, and thank you for everything you're doing.